On the show today, we have guest Mary Kelly. Mary Kelly is a longtime champion of higher education. Mary Kelly is a dynamic leader who intentionally blends her passion and knowledge. Kelly joined Strata Tech Group in 2010 as the Chief Operating Officer, soon after promoted to President, and in 2011, President and Chief Executive Officer. Kelly has over 20 years' experience in post-secondary education with a combination of for-profit and nonprofit institutions. Kelly holds a Bachelor's of Arts in English, Master of Arts in English Education, and an MS in Educational Policy from the University of Albany. In 2020, she was appointed to the Board of Career Education Colleges and Universities. Kelly is on the board of directors for the ACE Mentor Program and is a member of the Arizona State Board for Private Post-Secondary Education. Get ready for an amazing episode.
I'm educational justice coach Lindsay Lyons, and here on the Time for Teachership podcast, we learn how to inspire educational innovation for racial and gender justice, design curricula grounded in student voice, and build capacity for shared leadership. I'm a former teacher leader turned instructional coach. I'm striving to live a life full of learning, running, baking, traveling, and parenting because we can be rockstar educators and be full human beings. If you're a principal, assistant superintendent, curriculum director, instructional coach, or teacher who enjoys nerding out about co-created curriculum with students, I made this show for you. Here we go. Mary, welcome to the Time for Teachership podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Lindsay.
Listeners will have just heard the formal bio at the start of the show, but I wanted to invite you to share anything else that is something people should keep in mind as they're engaging with the episode and as we kind of jump into our conversation today. It can be personal, professional, what's on your mind today, anything you think.
Oh my God, a lot's on my mind today. There's a lot of craziness going on. We don't have time for all that. So I guess probably the one question I get a lot, look, I'm a CEO of a very large organization in a predominantly male space. So I do get a lot of questions like, how did that happen? And I have to tell you, Lindsay, it's totally by accident. So I did not wake up one day and say, guess what? I want to be CEO. I came from a very large family, and there were problems in my family. My dad was an alcoholic, and I kept getting these high IQ scores, but I wasn't doing well in school. And all they kept doing was testing me, but nobody really kind of asked the question that needed to be asked, right? So I get into high school, and I had an English teacher in high school who actually asked me the question. She said, you're so smart. Why is there something going on? Specifically said, is there something going on at home? And I cried, and I never had that conversation. And you know what? For the first time in my life, I felt like I was seen at school. And it changed the trajectory of my life. It really did. And at that point, subconsciously, I said to myself, this is what I want to do. I want to help kids like me, and I want to go into teaching. And so I went into teaching, thinking I was going to be a teacher, right? That's another story. I did teach for a little while. Be honest with you, I hated the public system. I loved my kids, but there was a lot of politics. I'm just not, what you see is what you get from me. I'm a New Yorker, and I just couldn't do the politics, and I spoke out too much. And long story short, I was pretty miserable. A friend of mine was working in adult ed and said, have you ever thought of working with adults? And I'm like, I don't know. I want to make a difference. They're already adults. I can't make a difference there. And I went to work for Bryan and Stratton, which is a business college in New York, fantastic school. And my very first job with adults was teaching English and math fundamentals. And Lindsay, I fell in love. These were my people. These were people that had been dismissed as troublemakers. You'll never be anything. But they were so smart. No one had ever given them a chance, and no one had seen them. And so that was my foray into adult education. Years later, you heard my bio. I was in there for a while. Then I thought I was working for a nonprofit, for a for-profit school. I said, oh, for-profit's bad. And I went to work for a nonprofit school. Guess what? They're the same. It's about getting people enrolled, right? And I worked for New School University in New York, which was great. But it was all the same. And I found that the for-profits, the good ones, and there's a lot of good ones you never hear about. A lot of people doing really good work. they're out there and they're responding to a need that nobody else is serving. And up until recently, they were the only ones servicing a particular group. So, but long story short, I left there and I went into the nonprofit world. I said, these people are crazy. I ran back to education. So, you know what? And then I've been in it ever since. And I found I was working at Lincoln Education. They had 38 schools up and down the East Coast. I became a campus president, a group vice president, kept moving up. But I was in medical and allied health, and I really wanted to get into the skilled trades. But I was really good at what I did, and I just couldn't do it at Lincoln. And the old CEO of Lincoln started this company, had been coming after me for a while. And I said, yep, I get to go do the skilled trades. Let me do it. And I had been teaching, I'd been in education for a long time at that point, and I didn't think there was more to show me. But man, I fell in love again. And I've been here for 15 years, and it's been a blast, and I work with amazing people here. So kind of a long story, but that's the story. And here I am.
I love it. Oh, I love that backstory. And I love that it's grounded in kind of just a simple question that was transformative for you, right? Thinking about the power that educators hold to influence students' sense of belonging and their life trajectories. I mean, it's a beautiful story that illustrates that potential and that positive opportunity that we all have in education space. So thank you for that. I think, this is probably connected to what you were just sharing, but I'm curious to know, I often ask the question at the start of these shows. Dr. Bettina Love describes the idea of freedom dreaming as dreams grounded in the critique of injustice. And so I'm always curious, what that big dream is that guests hold for the education space. So do you mind telling us about what that big dream might be for you?
Yeah, that big dream is my dream come true, right? I want education to be available to everybody, no matter where you're from, and to be the difference maker for you, right? And I think there's a lot of people that have pointed that out. I think, English, there's a lot of people that are born on the wrong side of the tracks. They didn't do anything wrong. They just are born in a certain area, and they have access to the worst of everything, right? But education can be that one thing that lifts them out of there. How many stories have we heard about people that come from there through an education? That is the way for upward mobility. And I want that for everybody in this country. And unfortunately, right now, there's a lot of people that don't have that and aren't having access to it and don't know how to get it. And so my dream is that someday it'll be very easy for everyone to be able to access that. And we can go back to being, look, America is not an ideal. We were the American dream, right? It was come here and you can be anything you want if you work hard enough. It's not true anymore. You could work your butt off and you still may not be able to get where you need to get. And that's not correct. Like, we need to look at that as a society and say, where do we go off the rails here? And part of it is the education system. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. There are so many pieces of the education system that are just
oh my God. I know.
Working, right?
I just want you to look. I'm a huge fan of public education. I do believe that everybody should have access. So, I just want to throw that out. I do think that looking at the economy and having a free market helps make things better. Having that competition, I think all those pieces are important, right? But when you base a society, when you base education funding on tax dollars, you're in trouble. There's always going to be inequality. Like, it's just it's an unequal system that was built from the start. So get rid of the system and figure out a better way. And it's not the lottery either.
Yeah, great point. So yeah, I'm curious to know, I guess in the rest of the time that we have together, like, how do we accomplish that, or how have you kind of accomplished that, right? I mean, I think there's probably several things that go into it. I often ask about, mindset shifts for educators and ways that we kind of move away from that traditional mindset that, like, oh, okay, you're born with wealth, so you're going to have all of these AP opportunities, or, whatever it is. And there's also kind of like concrete actions that education systems and educators in classrooms can take. I'm curious, like, feel free to go either direction, both directions, like mindsets or actions. What have you seen be successful?
I love how you're thinking. And they're great questions. I think that's a loaded question in many ways, right? And so a lot of times, like, I will say this, and I'm going to go off track for a minute, but I have a lot of friends. We've been around for a while, and we talk about stuff. And And some of my friends are getting a little disenfranchised and like, oh my God, all these bad things are happening and da 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 da. My belief is that most people are good. Most people are good. And you see that. Like when 9/11 happened, when there's a crisis that happens, when the Houston floods came, I mean, people all jump in. It doesn't matter if you're an immigrant or a non-immigrant, like everybody was in Texas when they had the Houston floods, you had people that were jumping in boats and saving people. Right? Like everybody was in it together. And for that moment, we were together, right? And I think generally that's where people are, but they get so overwhelmed by how much there is to do. So your question is a little overwhelming. Like, how do you fix like this whole broken system? And you asked me how I do it. Like for me, I obviously I haven't fixed it. But I come from a place of what can I do in my sphere of influence, right? Like I told you my story. If someone made a difference to me, how can I make a difference in the people that I'm around and that I'm exposed to and that I can affect, right? The skilled trades is part of that has really spoken to me because you're getting a group of people, quite honestly, like if you look at our country, like who took people took shop classes. They said, oh, only the dumb kids take shop classes. You have millionaire plumbers. These people aren't dumb, right? They were actually smart. They were smarter than most of us. You know, I got out with an English degree. I wasn't making anywhere near what my friends who started their own business and were in the skilled trades were doing, right? So I think that's part of it. Like in the part of the story that we sold, we're seeing that it's wrong. You see Gen Z today, and they're saying, "What am I going to spend for college, and why am I going to spend it? Is it worth it? What am I going to get out of it?" Right? And that's a legitimate question. And in the skill trades, you have a way of equalizing what education made unequal, right? Kids were put in track. I actually don't believe in track systems. I don't believe in that at all. I think, and you probably know this, right? Research has totally shown that when you mainstream people, they do better. My older brother is, I think Joe's 60, well, maybe he's 69. He's going to be 70. Joe's awesome. He was borderline when he was born. So they used forceps. He was in a military hospital. My father was military for a while. And so at that time, I mean, he was borderline. If he had put in a mainstream classroom, his life would have been very different. But he wasn't. He was put in special classes. And so, you know, the Pygmalion effect, right? He rose to what level they were expecting. And his life turned out very different. I mean, he's great, he's married and all that, but what could it have been if we had just mainstreamed him, right? So I got totally off track and forgot where I was going.
Great point.
Feel free to redirect me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think with the track system, I'd love to jump on there. Just, you're absolutely right, right? The research shows that there is only disastrous like effects of that doesn't serve anyone.
Right.
And so I think about that in terms of how, you know, both like thinking about how people choose to enroll in the skills trades in a school such as that or a system such as that. But I also think about, you know, how the school itself is operating, right, in the skills trades, like how you kind of do away with that. So can you take us kind of behind the scenes of like, what is the structure of your system and kind of how do you kind of push back against that?
Sure. Well, listen, everyone's equal. Like we have an open enrollment. So if you want to learn how to do welding and you've never done it before, come on down. And we have, you know, we put out over 5,000 graduates a year, right? I have 5 schools, soon to be another school, very large schools. So like the Houston school is about 1,300. They all range about 1,000. But it's open enrollment. I mean, you're paying to go to school. So who am I to say you can't, right? I literally, to be honest with you, I have had in welding, we actually had we've had 3 students I know just at my Jacksonville campus that were physically handicapped. And I was like, hey, are we doing the wrong thing by letting them in? And my people were like, they say they can do it. We got to give them a chance. 2 of them were deaf. They're out working in the welding world, right? They knew what they could do. So there isn't, from the very get-go, there's not an inequality. Like you don't get tested and then put in a track. Everybody's in the same track together. And you're really just learning a skill. So part of it too is they're not spending a lot of time on academic subjects, right? I will say though, like when you're in HVAC and electrical, there's a lot of theory there. I mean, you have to learn Ohm's law, you have to learn quite a bit. So, and students will decide where they want to go. Like if it's, if it's someone who really doesn't want to like get into the books, they may go into welding. And so what's really cool for our guys is if you're going to have to take some stuff, right? But if you're going to go into welding, you're only going to spend out of 5 days, only one day is going to be classroom, right? It's going to be online, which we pivoted during COVID for that. And our students don't want to have to spend gas money and go to school every day, right? So we try to create a robust online experience, only for the didactic, because the skills you have to do inside. What are you going to learn on the didactic? You're not going to learn English composition. You don't need to know that as a welder. But you are going to learn about gases and how you use gases, right? You're going to learn to read blueprints because you can't be a welder without reading blueprints. So what you're learning is completely relevant to what you're doing. And I think that's partly what we've missed. Like I know way back when I was in school and trying to get in an education classroom, they were talking about, trying to integrate the curriculum. I don't think we've done that at all. I mean, we've actually moved away from that and we've gotten told to teach to the test. And so when you integrate the curriculum in something that's relevant for the student, they're going to be more interested, right? The students that aren't good students don't want to sit there and have someone be Charlie Brown and wonk, wonk, wonk at them, right? They want to know, how does this make sense to me? How can I apply this? Right? And that's our job as teachers to give them that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think so much about the ratio of being talked at and like, learning new content versus application or just let me do the thing in traditional schools, right? It's probably backwards, right? It's probably 4 times is the talking and then one day maybe is an application versus that 1 to 4 that you have, which is just so awesome. And I also am hearing like, whatever someone's physical capacities or whatever someone's kind of limiting beliefs that, adults or educators may have of students, it's like, no, the student knows, like you said, like the student knows what they're capable of, what they're interested in, let them do the thing. I mean, that is revolutionary in education because that's not what we do, right? We, like you said, we do tracking or we test kids and then we put them in boxes and how cool would it be if everyone did that, where it was like, oh, you want to take that course? Great, go for it. We've got you, right? Like, I just, that's not the way that it usually is. And think of how agentic students, I mean, I imagine, right? Like how agentic students feel when it's like, oh, I get to decide. That's so cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the good news is I think we're starting to move forward as people are questioning. There's more questioning of the traditional system than ever, right? I mean, there's questions like, why first off does a kid have to go to college, right? And they may not even have to go to trade school. I mean, there's places where in high school, they're creating employer high school relationships where the student can go right to work. I'm all for that, right? The apprenticeship model, I mean, that's used very well in other countries. We've not done well with that. All of those things are really important. I do think kids know, and I think as parents, I'm a parent, I thought I knew better. And, I'll tell you, our youngest, she just got her doctorate degree in physical therapy. That's where she wanted to go. But she went to the school. She knew where she wanted to go. She planned all that out. And it was nothing that I thought it should be, but she knew. She knew where she was supposed to be. She met her guy there. That's, she's been with a long, like she just knew how to follow her path. And I think we forget that our kids know. Right?
That is so beautiful. I think the start of my kind of professional journey really is rooted in student voice and like the student voice research field and all of that. And so that absolutely speaks to me. And I think about the capacity students have to, pursue whatever educational course they want, but also to do things that are meaningful in their communities. So civic action or civic engagement. I think about like, the welder or the plumber who is like an integral member of the community. Because what would the community do without access to that skill, right? I mean, thinking about that community connectedness and the agency students have, not in their own lives, but in the lives of those around them is so cool. And I think you've illuminated for me just different ways that your organization does things compared to traditional schooling. Is there anything else that we should know? For those of us who haven't actually like been in a school like those that you have, what else is different, for the better from traditional ways we might school kids that is, more equitable or more student oriented?
Yeah. So I would say, well, look, first off, we're for profit, right? And one of the beautiful things of the for profits that people never talk about is if a student is paying their money, they're making a choice. So what that group of schools have done really, really well, and some of them, there were bad actors there, just like there are bad actors elsewhere, right? It's mostly at the degree level, it's not, at the lower level. But what they've done well is being able to figure out how to keep, there's a lot of student services. So you see a lot of public education now, higher education is all moving to student retention and bringing in student retention teams. We've been doing that for years. Right? Like all this, if you look at like Southern New Hampshire, right? Like big school, Paul LeBlanc, who did a fantastic job taking that to where it was and becoming a big player, will tell you that he based his model off of University of Phoenix, right? And University of Phoenix out there now is getting a bad rap, and people are saying, oh, they just took their money and that. University of Phoenix started because nobody was teaching adults and teaching them on their schedule. And that's what it started at. It started as a way to help adult people be able to go to school and meet their schedule. The student's a customer. Everyone that works for me, we have over 500 and I think 540 employees at this point, right? We've grown a lot. It's because they know the student is the customer, right? And I'm really lucky because I have a ton of people that work for me that are here for the mission. They all understand that these students are coming to us somewhere. If they're right out of high school, they're doing it because they got to do something, right? Or they've always wanted to do this. If we've had people that are 60 years old, we get people that are further on in adulthood that are working in dead-end jobs and they can't support their family, and they're like, I got to do something. And somebody told them, hey, the skilled trades is probably a good place. They come and talk to us, and we're able to kind of direct them where they need to go, right? Like, that's who's coming to us. My people all understand what a difference it makes. They're all here short term. They're about 7 months in, and they can work while they're here because it's part time, right? Because most of my people need to work. I don't have really wealthy people going to school, right? I have a lot of Pell Grant students that are coming here, and they can get out in 7 months and they can completely change the trajectory for them, and not only them, but for generations to come. They don't have to make $15 an hour wherever that is, right? Like I'm sure you've seen the money that skilled trade people make. I mean, if you're willing to work, I mean, if you're a welder and you're willing to travel, you can make six figures easily. So, I mean, that's the benefit of it. And so, and my people, a lot of them have been here a long time, and they've seen those stories where, a kid was homeless and came to school and they were homeless. They were living in a tent, but they finish. And then they come back a year later and I guess they call them these big dually trucks. Like that's a big thing, a dually truck. It's like this, I don't know. It's like a big truck. It's all souped up. It's all got all kinds of stuff, but they'll come driving up in there and they'll, or they'll say, oh, I'm putting my down payment on my house. Like, wow, what a great high to see that naturally, right?
Student as customer, and of course in the for-profit space you're literally like that is your customer, right? They're paying you, but
Yeah.
even in the public school space, I imagine that if we were to think like that as educators in all of the education spaces, right? Like in a sense, like I'm getting paid as a teacher because I have a student in my classroom who needs my help, right? I mean, you could do a little workaround logically, but that I love that, right? We are here to make that kid's dreams come true. We're here to have that student be successful, be on the trajectory for life that they want, to be a community member, to figure out like exactly what they want to do. I just love the idea that we are here for them. And I think like socialist in me or whatever. It's like, oh, it's so sad that it's like takes capitalism to like, make us think that way, but it totally does because we live in a capitalist system, right? That it is like, this is where my money or my paycheck is coming from is these students. Like, of course, I want to support them as best we can. And I hope that educators in public spaces can also take that nugget and live that out, because that is so inspiring to be able to say, like, I'm here for you guys. Like, what do you need? And I think there's probably a lot of ways that you can build systems and larger systems like around some of the things you're talking about, and having students have agency and direction in all of their educational kind of journeys. I'm curious to know what's like one thing that you would recommend an audience member who's engaging with this episode to like do once they're done with the episode, that might be able to give them just a little bit more student agency, or kind of some of the things that we've kind of talked about in the episode today. Like what's one action they could take to kind of get them started on that path of like the larger transformation that we've talked about.
Sure. And I would think like your listeners are mostly teachers, right?
Yeah, I would say teachers and leaders of schools and districts. Yeah.
I would immediately look at what you're offering and saying, is this meeting every individual's needs, or is this just based on a group? Right. And so that's another piece of what we do. They're in the lab a lot. We work with them. So like, say you're learning TIG welding, right? And by the way, I'm a horrible welder. I've gone out because I think it's important for people to see me do it. And we all laugh about it. And everyone laughed at me because that's why I'm in administration, because I can't weld, right? But it was great fun. And it's a lot harder than it looks. I will tell you that. So, but let's just say, you're doing a phase on TIG welding. You've got 20 kids. We do 20 to 1, no more than that on the lab floor, because that's the right amount for an instructor. And the instructor goes from booth to each kid has his own booth, and they're working at their own pace. And the instructor is dropping in and helping the student at their own pace, right? The outcome is they have to be able to do it. But 20 kids on the floor are doing it all in very different ways. The instructor will show them the demo. They all get together. It says, hey, here's how you do it. Then go do it. But then each kid's going to do it and have challenges with doing it. And that's where the instructor's working one-on-one with them, right? And every kid's going to have a different way that the instructor's going to have to talk to them. I mean, we've got fantastic instructors because they understand that, right? Like not every kid's going to learn the same. Some it's a visual thing. Some it's, showing them again. Some you may have to show them 5 times, whatever it happens to be. You may have to stand there right up with them as they're doing, whatever that happens to be, right? So, but if you're trying to learn TIG welding, the outcome at the end, you have to be able to do it. Like you're going to be measured. The assessment is you have to do it. And then in welding, it's basically like you look at the weld and you mark the errors, the imperfections. So which is kind of cool, right? Right. So all the kids have to have, like they have to graduate with a big, but the point is that everyone's going to be at a different level. And sometimes we get super advanced students that come in there and they knock it out right away. They've been working on their farm equipment or whatever it happens to be. We take those kids and we pair them up with the other kids that aren't doing well and say, well, you got to be here. So like, why don't you get some leadership while you're here? So I think that's a good example of how putting something into practice.
I think about the pedagogy of kind of coaching almost, right? When it's like, here's the model, we all have to get to the same outcome. You're all going to tackle it different ways. And then I am responsive to you in the room, like who needs what. I think that's like ultimately great pedagogy. I wish more classroom spaces were like that. That's incredible. And that they get to apply it right away, right? Like I'm going to watch the model and now I'm going to do the thing.
And in all honesty, to be fair, I mean, skilled trades, the physicality of it requires that.
Just to kind of wrap us up, I like to ask this question just for fun. It could be related to our conversation and kind of professional space, or it could just be personal, something unrelated to what we've talked about. What is something that you have been learning about lately?
AI. I am fascinated by AI. I haven't learned enough, right? AI is not going to replace skilled trades, but it's going to replace a lot of things, right? But I think it's going to make us better. But I think all of us have a responsibility. I wish I had seen, I'm 62, so I've been around for a while. I wish I had seen how big the internet was going to be back when it was starting. I would have done a lot more investigating, right? I understand where AI is going. I literally, Lindsay, in my LinkedIn box, we can save articles. I have 30 articles saved so that I can read them whenever I have time on the various. I just find AI fascinating. And I think, it's kind of like a Charles Dickens thing, right? It's the best of times. It was the worst of times, because it could be not good. But I think what it could do that's good really excites me.
That's interesting. Yeah, I need to learn more as well. That is definitely going to be something that, like you said, the internet, we look back on and be like, oh, wow, that's where it went.
Yeah, right. I totally missed it. I was like, oh, that's no big deal.
I think you're not alone. And then finally, where can listeners learn more about you, learn more about your organization, connect with you online? What are those spaces?
Sure. So our corporate website, so we are a Stratech Education Group. Our brands are Tulsa Welding School and the Refrigeration School. So if you wanted to go to a brand site and learn about Tulsa Welding School, it's tws.edu, I believe. And just look up Tulsa Welding School, and rsi.edu for the Refrigeration School. Stratech is Stratech, Stratatech, Stratech.com. That's our website. So, and I'm available. I'd love to talk to people. Mary.Kelly, Kelly, no E, please. That was a big thing in Ireland. That they will fight over that. So Mary Kelly at Stratatech.com. So
awesome. Mary, thank you so much for this conversation.
Oh, I had a ball, Lindsay. It was a lot of fun. And thank you for doing what you're doing. You're having very important conversations. And I'm just going to say one last thing. Yeah. Thank you to all your listeners, because teaching is a noble profession. You don't make enough money. That needs to change. There's so many unfair things about it. But if you heard my story, you can make the difference in a life. Don't forget that on a bad day, remember you're making a difference. And God bless you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you for that.
If you like this episode, I bet you'll be just as jazzed as I am about my coaching program for increasing student-led discussions in your school. Shane Safir and Jamila Dugan talk about a pedagogy of student voice in their book, Street Data. They say students should be talking for 75% of class time. Do students in your school talk for 75% of each class period? I would love for you to walk into any classroom in your community and see this in action. If you're smiling to yourself as you listen right now, grab 20 minutes on my calendar to brainstorm how I can help you make this big dream a reality. I'll help you build a comprehensive plan, from full-day trainings and discussion protocols like Circle and Socratic Seminar to follow-up classroom visits where I can plan, witness, and debrief discussion-based lessons with your teachers. Sign up for a nerdy, no-strings-attached brainstorm call at lindsaybethlyons.com/contact. Until next time, leaders, think big, act brave, and be your best self.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.